Hi, welcome to Wycliffe Library. I'm Miss Lori, and this is my Tween Time virtual program. So, without further ado, book number 1 is called Connect the Stars, written by Marissa de los Santos and David Teague. They have co-authored several middle grade books, all of which I find to be really, really great reads. So this book leads me to the question for you. Has anybody asked you the question ever, if you could choose one superpower, what would it be? Invisibility, flying, super strength, one of those? Well, the two main characters in this book both have superpowers, but they're not the superpowers of your superhero friends. The first character's name is Audrey, and Audrey's superpower is that she has the ability to know if someone is lying to her. And she outlines all of the very different kinds of lying that people do. Doesn't matter what type of lie it is, she can tell if someone is lying to her. And this superpower has made her middle school experience horrible. She's miserable all the time because a lot of times kids lie to each other. The second character in the book, his name is Aaron. Aaron and Audrey do not know each other. They're just two characters in the book. They will come to know each other. Aaron's superpower is that his mind is like an encyclopedia. Anything he's ever heard or read, he remembers word for word. So if he were a contestant on Jeopardy, this might be fabulous. However, he's not a contestant on Jeopardy. He is a middle school child, and when he's asked to think for himself, he cannot, and that becomes a problem. So because the kids are really troubled with their superpowers, their parents independently find that there's this very intensive desert trek that happens throughout the summer, and they send their children to this camp to do this desert trek. While they're on this very intense trek, something terrible happens. And the kids that are all in their group, all of whom have troubled pasts, have to come together. And they are so very, very different. They have to come together in order to survive. And that is the story. So I hope you enjoy it. I'm going to read just a little piece. I believe that it is, let's see. This is not halfway through the book, just a little ways into the book. They are already at the desert, in the desert. They have started meeting the other characters. And the person who's in charge of leading them on this trek is an ex-football player. His name is Jare, Jare. So I'm just going to give you a little piece. This, I believe, is coming from Audrey. After dinner, Jare gave a speech. When he'd met us that morning at the park's visitor center, he'd barely introduced himself before he'd started barking out orders. I'd taken it as a good sign since, as I've mentioned, I wasn't in the market for a big, chatty, get-to-know-each-other excursion. I had liked his impersonal, businesslike approach. But now, as we all sat around the campfire in a semicircle, Jare stood up, cleared his throat, and turned into a different person. He pointed his finger a lot. He clapped his hands together a lot. It was like he was part inspirational speaker, part football coach, which made sense since he was a former football player. A darn good one, high school All-American, college player of the year in his rookie season. Yeah, right, mumbled No Neck. I bet he rode the bench. But I could tell Jare was telling the truth. He really had been good, not that anyone seemed to care, because why would we? But I wasn't one of those guys who wanted to devote my entire life to tossing an oblate spheroid around an astroturf field, Jare went on. I wanted more. For the first time, I saw his truthfulness falter. Before I could think much about why this might be, Skinny Kid interrupted him. A football is actually a prolate spheroid with the profile of a vesica piscis. He said this cheerfully, as though he was honestly trying to be helpful. Even in the fading light, I could see Jer's face turning red. Maybe that had been the problem with what he'd said about the oblate spheroid. Pretending to know what you're talking about can look an awful lot like you're lying. I felt a little sorry for Jer. He'd probably used the term so we'd all think he was smart, not just a dumb football jock, and here he was, looking sort of dumb after all. After giving Skinny Kid an evil eye for a full 10 seconds, Jer clapped his hands together and continued. My point is, I know how to fight, how to work hard, how to win, and I know how to do it out here in a wilderness like you've never seen in your lives, a place where all the rules are different. Please, said Ketchup Hair in disgust. This is like my 4th wilderness camp. They're all alike. Jer's jaw tightened, but he didn't even glance at Ketchup Hair. I could tell he was gearing up for the grand finale part of his speech. He bent over a little, narrowed his eyes, and leveled a piercing gaze at us, stabbing his finger at random campers as he talked. Whatever you were back at home, a delinquent, a smart mouth, a spoiled brat behind the wheel of a BMW. The camp was for kids aged 13 to 14, which meant none of us would even be old enough to drive. Captain of the Math League, Jer sneered, like there was nothing stupider in the world than the captain of the Math League. A punk rock skateboarder punk, Ketchup Hair guffawed acidly at this. Valedictorian, class clown, class president, Annie in the school musical, first chair trombone, etc. Whatever you were, you're not that here. You're nobody. And that was how they started their trek. Hi, welcome back. Book number 2. This one, again, is for upper level 5th grade, maybe 6th, 7th, all the way through high school. This is a classic. Many of you may have actually already have read this book, but I'm going to talk it anyway because it's a good one. This one is a J+ book. You'll know that by the binding there. Find it over in the YA section at the Wycliffe Library, and it is Tuck Everlasting by Natalie Babbitt. So, we were talking in the first book talk about superpowers. Here's a big one. How would you like to live forever? This book has that option, I suppose. It's a huge part of this book. So some of the questions you might want to think about when reading this book is, what would be good about having the opportunity to live forever? What might be bad about having the opportunity to live forever? And also one to think about maybe after you've read the book is, what might happen if someone got their hands on something that would allow you, like the Fountain of Youth. Someone found a Fountain of Youth and decided to sell whatever, if it was water, if it was whatever, to sell it for personal gain. It's a lot to think about. At first you might think, wow, that would be great, to be young forever, to live forever, to experience all kinds of things through all sorts of generations. But after you read the book, you might rethink that. So the main character in this book, her name is Winnie Foster. She ends up stumbling upon someone in the woods across from her home, woods that her family owns, and is supposed to be no trespassing. She happens to be in the woods and she sees someone drinking from a spring, a natural spring. So water is flowing up from the ground and she sees someone drinking from that. She's thirsty, she kind of wants to have a drink herself, but this stranger warns her off it. I'm going to read you a little piece at the very beginning of this book as she finds this stranger drinking from the well here, or from the natural spring. The boy eyed her as she came forward. "What are you doing here?" he asked sternly. "It's my wood," said Winnie, surprised by the question. "I can come here whenever I want to. At least, I was never here before, but I could have come any time." "Oh," said the boy, relaxing a little. "You're one of the Fosters, then." I'm Winnie, she said. Who are you? I'm just Tuck, he answered. How do? And he put out a hand. Winnie took his hand, staring at him. He was even more beautiful up close. Do you live nearby? She managed at last, letting go of his hand reluctantly. I never saw you before. Do you come here a lot? No one's supposed to. It's our wood. Then she added quickly, it's all right, though, if you come here. I mean, it's all right with me. The boy grinned. No, I don't live nearby, and no, I don't come here often. Just passing through. And thanks, I'm glad it's all right with you. That's good, said Winnie irreverently. She stepped back and sat down primly a short distance from him. How old are you, anyway? She asked, squinting at him. There was a pause. At last he said, Why do you want to know? I just wondered, said Winnie. All right. I'm 104 years old, he told her solemnly. No, I mean really, she persisted. Well then, he said, if you must know, I'm 17. 17? That's right. Oh, said Winnie hopelessly. 17. That's old. You have no idea, he agreed with a nod. Winnie had the feeling he was laughing at her, but decided it was a nice kind of laughing. Are you married? She asked next. This time he laughed out loud. No, I'm not married. Are you? Now it was Winnie's turn to laugh. Of course not, she said. I'm only 10, but I'll be 11 pretty soon. And then you'll get married, he suggested. Winnie laughed again, her head on one side, admiring him. And then she pointed to the spurt of water. Is that good to drink? She asked. I'm thirsty. Just Tuck's face was instantly serious. Oh, that. No, it's not, he said quickly. You mustn't drink from it. Comes right up out of the ground. Probably pretty dirty. And he began to pile the pebbles over it again. But you drank some, Winnie reminded him. Oh, did you see that? He looked at her anxiously. Well, me, I'll drink anything. I mean, I'm used to it. It wouldn't be good for you, though. Why not? Said Winnie. She stood up. It's mine anyway, if it's in the wood. I want some. I'm about as dry as dust. And she went to where he sat and knelt down beside the pile of pebbles. Believe me, Winnie Foster, said Jess, it would be terrible for you if you drank any of this water. Just terrible. I can't let you. Well, I still don't see why not, said Winnie plaintively. I'm getting thirstier every minute. If it didn't hurt you, it won't hurt me. If my papa was here, he'd let me have some. You're not going to tell him about it, are you? Said Jessie. His face had gone very pale under its sunburn. He stood up and put a bare foot firmly on the pile of pebbles. I knew this would happen sooner or later. Now what am I going to do? As he said this, there was a crashing sound among the trees and a voice called, Jess! Thank goodness, he said, blowing out his cheeks in relief. Here comes Ma and Miles. They'll know what to do. And sure enough, a big, comfortable-looking woman appeared, leading a fat old horse, and at her side was a young man almost as beautiful as Jess. It was May Tuck with her other son. And at once, when she saw the two of them, Jess with his foot on the pile of pebbles and Winnie on her knees beside him, she seemed to understand. Her hand flew to her bosom, grasping at the old brooch that fastened her shawl, and her face went bleak. Well, boys, here it is. The worst is happening at last. So, seems that Ma and the Tuck boys have a story to tell. And that's where this story begins. Tuck Everlasting. It's actually a very quick little book, but you will speed through it, I'm sure. Tuck Everlasting, Natalie Babbitt. Enjoy it.